Imagine waking up one day and not recognizing your wife's face. You see her, hear her, touch her, but your brain refuses to tell you who she is. How fragile is our perception of reality, really? This is the chilling reality that inspired one of the most fascinating books ever written about the human mind. Neurologist Oliver Sacks documented dozens of bizarre but true cases. They seemed like they were pulled straight from the pages of science fiction. Sacks' work, particularly in The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, reveals how little we actually know about our own brains. Each story is a powerful testament to the mind's complexity. They also show its incredible, sometimes terrifying, vulnerability. Take the perplexing case of Dr. P, a respected music teacher. He spoke clearly, taught students, and lived a seemingly normal life. But when it came to recognizing objects or faces, his behavior turned profoundly strange. At the end of a consultation, he reached out to grab his hat. Instead, he grabbed his wife's head, trying to lift it onto his own. He wasn't joking. He genuinely believed her head was his hat. This was a symptom of a rare neurological condition called visual agnosia. Visual agnosia is the brain's inability to recognize objects, despite fully functional eyes. The patient can see but cannot understand what they are seeing. The image is there, processed by the eyes, but the meaning is gone. Dr. P could describe a flower as a green object with a red end, yet he couldn't identify it as a rose. Only when he smelled it did he realize what it was. He constantly relied on other senses to fill in the enormous gaps left by his vision. His world, visually, was a collection of abstract features, not whole, recognizable entities. He wasn't blind. His intelligence was intact. However, the part of his brain responsible for interpreting visual input, located in the occipital lobe, was no longer functioning properly. It was as if his brain had lost its dictionary for visual information. Sacks later confirmed that Dr. P had a lesion in that specific region of the brain. Essentially, he could see, but without understanding. His once familiar world had become a chaotic jumble of shapes, colors, and disconnected impressions. Yet somehow, he managed to function. He developed incredible compensatory strategies, relying on auditory and tactile cues to navigate daily life. It was like living in a bustling world populated only by voices and textures, a world without faces. But Dr. P wasn't the only one experiencing such profound alterations of reality. Oliver Sacks wrote about a man known as Jimmy G, the lost mariner, whose life was frozen in time. He believed he was still living in the year 1945. Jimmy had complete memory loss after that date. Every few minutes, his mind would reset, like a broken record stuck in a never-ending loop. He would introduce himself with enthusiasm, engage in a cheerful conversation, and mere seconds later, forget it ever happened. He couldn't form new memories, a condition known as severe anterograde amnesia. To him, time was not a continuous flow, but a series of isolated, unconnected moments. He was a mariner lost on a vast, timeless sea. Then there was the fascinating case of Christina, a woman who suddenly lost her proprioception. This is the sense that tells us where our body is in space, even with our eyes closed. She simply couldn't feel where her limbs were. She described it as if she had no weight, no position, no body. She had to constantly look at her limbs to know they existed, to reassure herself of their presence. Without visual confirmation, her body felt alien, disconnected. Her brain had disconnected from the fundamental sense of body ownership. When her eyes closed, she felt herself dissolve, a terrifying sensation of non-existence. It was a constant, conscious effort just to maintain her physical form. And what about the woman who couldn't recognize her own leg? After suffering a stroke, she woke up in the hospital. She was convinced someone had placed a corpse's limb in her bed and tried to throw it out, injuring herself in the process. Her brain had severed its connection to that part of her body, perceiving it as a foreign, horrifying object. This is a rare, unsettling condition known as somatoparaphrenia. It highlights how fundamental our sense of body ownership truly is. Sachs also encountered the extraordinary phenomenon of musical hallucinations. One woman, Mrs. O.C., began hearing opera arias playing non-stop in her head. The music was clear, complex, and utterly inescapable. Crucially, she wasn't mentally ill. She knew the music wasn't real. Her auditory cortex was simply firing on its own, creating a private, persistent concert. It was a vivid reminder that what we hear is often a construct of our own brain. Another compelling case was the disembodied lady, a patient who experienced severe proprioceptive loss after an infection. She described feeling like a ghost, completely disconnected from her own body. She had to rely on constant visual feedback and intense mental concentration to move. Without her sense of proprioception, her body felt unreal. She could only walk by carefully watching her feet, as if manipulating a puppet. This highlighted how our brain constructs our very sense of self from constant sensory input. Then there was the intriguing case of the autistic artist, Stephen Wiltshire. While diagnosed with savant syndrome, his brain processes information in a unique way. He can draw entire cityscapes from memory after just one helicopter ride. His mind retains intricate visual details with uncanny precision, far beyond typical human capacity. This case shows how specialized neural pathways can lead to extraordinary, almost superhuman abilities, alongside specific challenges. It makes us ponder the diverse forms of intelligence. Each of these cases feels unbelievable, plucked from a nightmare or a fantastical tale. But every single one is real, meticulously documented, and supported by rigorous neurological evidence. These people weren't insane. They were trapped in misfiring neural circuits, experiencing reality through a fractured lens. So what do these profound disconnections tell us? They tell us that our understanding of the world, and even of ourselves, depends entirely on fragile electrical signals. When just one part of the intricate neural network misfires, everything can unravel with horrifying speed and precision. Our perception of reality, our memories, our very sense of self, all are delicate constructs. They rely on billions of neurons firing in perfect synchronicity. A slight deviation, a tiny lesion, and the world we thought we knew can dissolve into a bewildering, unrecognizable landscape. Just when you think you've heard it all, there's the case of the man who felt his left hand had a will of its own. It would slap his face, throw things, even try to choke him. Doctors called it alien hand syndrome, a rare neurological glitch where the brain's motor control splits, and one hand acts with no conscious intent. Imagine living like that, and then ask yourself, how much control do we really have? The stories of Oliver Sacks don't just show us broken brains, they show us how fragile our own perception really is, and how anyone, at any time, could fall into a different reality. Want to keep exploring the weirdest corners of the human mind? Subscribe to Curiosity AI and stay curious.